Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the political and government correspondent, and we're now taping this episode in mid-November. We're past the election, but not really past the election. For purposes of today's program, though, we're not going to be talking about national politics, maybe a little bit about state, but our guest is Hudson Mayor Rich O'Connor, who's been on the show several times. Mayor Rich, welcome back.
Thank you, Jamie. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, I just thought that we've had all this partisan politic talk for months and months now, and I think it gets down to time where we can talk about, 2020 has been a heck of a year, and now we're going into 2021. So I thought it was just a good time to get an update on things that are going on with the city. And I want to kick it off with initiative that is your idea, and I want you to be able to talk about it in whatever parameters you want, but it's the Golden Rule initiative.
That's right. And I appreciate you asking the question. I could spend a lot of time on this, but first of all, the genesis of this is, well, it goes back to my memory of first grade in particular, where when we sat down at our first assigned desk, we had three things. We had lined paper there, we had a pencil, and to learn our letters and a script. And then we had a ruler, that 12-inch ruler, wooden ruler, that on the back side had the Golden Rule. Obviously, that had an impact on me. I remember it very well. We would recite the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning and then also recite the Golden Rule every single morning. I think that we have somewhat gotten away from that. I had been having conversations with folks for a while, and then in June, I had an opportunity to sit down with Shelley Tugas and Madeline over at the library. And in our conversation, I brought this up and said that I really would like to try to do something locally. And immediately they went to, instead of a ruler, let's do bookmarks. And I thought, what a great idea. So that conversation started in June, and I was really starting to put together maybe the rudimentary pieces of trying to get a group together where we could do this initiative. But as time went on and we were seeing a lot of the negativity and civility that was happening nationally at our state level, starting to infect our own community, I had had conversations with a number of different people and a couple organizations, and it was time that we rolled this out. We need to bring civil discourse back into our daily lives. We need to have empathy for everyone in our community, regardless of their situation. We need to have understanding of why people say the things they do, believe the things they do, and we need to come to grips with that, and we need to build bridges to be able to bring civil discourse back to our community. So people are going to see this being rolled out. As I said, the library is involved, a number of organizations are involved, and like I said, the first thing that you're going to see, they're being ready to be printed right now, or these bookmarks are getting like 20,000 of them printed. And we're going to get them out in the library. I want to get them into the schools. I want to personally stop down to the businesses throughout the city and hand them out, and in quantities that they can hand out to their patrons as they come through their businesses. That's the first step. A friend of mine had emailed me a gift of a book called The Golden Rule, and it really lays out what the Golden Rule is about, and that it's not just specific to any culture or any religion. It crosses all boundaries. It transcends ancient and modern civilizations, ancient and modern belief systems, and we recognize that in this initiative. But this book also lays it out very well. It may not be the book that we choose, but it's a great idea to have a book that we can get to kids, and so that they can understand the Golden Rule and have this part of their learning process again. I think that's probably the best place to start. But as I talked to people, they said yes, and it would be great to get it in their parents' hands and in their grandparents' hands. And that's probably true. So you being part of the school system on the chairing the board, it would be nice if we could get this into the schools at a grade level early on anyway. And I'll be talking with the superintendent as well as you probably in the future about making that a reality. I've been invited to do the reading with the kids at the library where I could read this book. I want to get this book into the schools. I want to get the golden rule into the schools. And that will be the beginning of the initiative. What you might see if anybody that watches our city website is now the masthead on the city website is Hudson, a golden rule city. And that's important. It's a great beginning, great start. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about that.
Absolutely. And just, I mean, for our viewers, I would hope that everyone watching knows what the golden rule is, but why don't you fill them in if they don't?
The golden rule, as I learned it, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Simply put, and put in other words by some of those cultures that I talked about, is treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat others with respect. And that's what it's all about. That's the beginning of civility. Just treat people the way you want them to treat you. Thank you for asking that question. I guess
Yeah. Well, right. I think our generation takes that for granted. I remember seeing a ruler with that on there as well.
There you go.
I think somewhere, maybe it was the late 60s, we got away from that type of thinking. And, it was many people that I think misinterpreting the Constitution, which says we have freedom of religion, and turn it into freedom from religion. And you already pointed out that religion, the golden rule transcends a particular religion. And it's just simple morality and, like you said, civil discourse, which goes back to ancient times.
Right.
The prominent civilizations required that type of thinking. And so curious, are you getting, since this became public, are you getting pushback from anyone saying that you're trying to push Christianity or a specific, belief system on anyone?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not that, but I've got, like I said, the beginnings of trying to get a group together that's going to have people coming from the right and left. And I'm getting a little pushback on people that want to be included in this group. And that's something that we have to work through. As far as the religion thing, I have not gotten any pushback on that because, as we said, every single religion that I looked at, and I researched this, and I didn't have to spend a lot of time on it. I didn't have to look too deeply into this. Every single religion embraces this concept. They just word it a little bit differently. And like I said, every single ancient culture, every single ancient religion, every modern culture, every modern religion embraces some iteration of the golden rule.
Well, and there's so many moral values that go along with the golden rule. You mentioned empathy already, and you also mentioned respect, and I think of responsibility. These are also things that the YMCA has been promoting, those kind of basic values. But to be able to sum it up in one rule, I think is awesome, and it requires partnership. So I hope that yes, our school district can do something to do its part, to promote this as well.
And you referenced the Y. Chris Costa over there, the director of our YMCA, is very much in favor of this and wants to help out.
That's good. Well, and you mentioned the genesis of it, and you've had your flashpoints, if you will, where the incivility may have started creeping in over things like whether or not we are going to be a diverse and welcoming community. That sparked vitriol. Now with COVID and the use of masks or the non-use of masks has also caused that incivility to come to the surface again. So that's where I became aware of this. They said, have you heard about the mayor's golden rule? And I just Googled it quick, and it came up in an article where there was consideration of a potential local ordinance for mask wearing when the state mandate expires, which I understand is within the next 2 weeks or so. So my question to you is, where do things stand with regard to any kind of mask mandate or government imposed mandate?
Okay, so I'm sure the people around here know that the city council, Hudson City Council, has struggled with this issue for a little while, a couple months, I guess. Last time we really looked at it seriously about doing any type of restriction here, I want people to understand that the first thing that would have had to happen is that the city would have needed to declare a state of emergency before we could move in the direction of imposing any type of restrictions. The city council at that time, and that was before all these spikes, okay, this was probably right around the end of August, right around Labor Day, maybe somewhere in there. And we hadn't experienced this huge uptrend, the spiking that we're experiencing today. So the council at that point had decided that they did not, I mean, it was a split vote. It was a tie vote. I actually broke the tie. And so some of the council thought that we were at that point where we should declare a state of emergency. Half the council believed we were not. I didn't believe at that moment that we were at that point. And especially given this is important. The city does not have a health director. We don't have somebody here working for the city that can apprise us of all of the things that are happening in the county, in the state, with the CDC, for example. And so the only entity near us that also embraces us, that has that health official, is the St. Croix County. And they have a health director there. And of course, I mean, we are the county seat, so they're just down the street. We were more or less looking to the county for guidance, looking for the state for guidance on any type of restrictions that we should impose. And we believed, I think I can speak for the council, that the county, if restrictions are going to happen, should come from the county. But there were people that believed that the county was dragging their feet at the time. I'm not one of those people necessarily at the time. And of course, they struggled with this issue greatly over the last month. And last night had a vote on an ordinance that would have vested the power to invoke restrictions with the director of health with the county. And that failed by one vote, I believe, last night. I think there were some amendments to it that took it in some different directions as well. But suffice to say, the city does not have that director here of health that the county does, and we were waiting to see what the county and the state were going to do. We have had an initiative that was proposed by Councilmember Paul DeZiel, which is the Safer Hudson initiative. And what he was hoping to do was to have businesses more or less identify themselves if they mandated that people wear masks at all times in their business, or to what level they would require masking. And then there would have been a clearinghouse database of information that would come from these businesses that people in the city could then access on a website, and a feed would come through our website. It may have been, I can't remember if the proposal had also suggested that it be on the Chamber of Commerce website, but I think there were a couple different venues where this information would reside. And people then could go there to see if they wanted to go shopping at a particular business, what their requirements were, what their policies were for masking, and any other policies they might have in place for distancing and for the number of people allowed in the business. That Paul decided that maybe it wasn't time for that. Plus, he was waiting to see what was happening with the governor at that moment. We did have a mask requirement with the state and through an edict by Governor Evers, as well as the number of people allowed into business and social distancing and things like that. So Paul was more concerned what would happen, as well as a couple of the council members here, what would happen if that edict expired without being renewed, and it's due to expire November 21st, I believe. And so they wanted to have something in place for the folks here in town. That more or less kind of has been put on hold for now, waiting once again to see what was going to happen at the county level. We, at the time of the discussion of Paul's suggestion, knew that the county was going to be taking up their proposal on their ordinance. And we knew that we still had a masking mandate that had been issued by Governor Evers that was still in effect and was not expired yet. So there's probably more to that, more coming from that. But I think where we left off is that we were going to be putting something together in the way of guidance from the city as far as we think it is wise, prudent for people to be wearing masks and to be socially distanced. But any other further tougher restrictions, again, we're waiting for guidance from the county and from the state.
And now that it doesn't look like there's going to be any from the county, so this is something that may get revisited.
Yes, potentially, yeah.
I mean, and the other thing, just simple numbers on public gatherings. I know nobody wants to shut down businesses or anything like that, nor does government want to intrude on private gatherings. But do you see anything being done with regard to public gatherings, or is that just not likely to get any juice?
No, again, for us to invoke that type of restriction, the first thing we would have to do is declare a state of emergency here in the city. In order for us to do that, and again, this is critical, we need more information coming from the health director at the county. And to date, we're just not getting that type of information. We need to know if there are hot spots in the city, what to avoid. We need to know where they're at.
Right. So what kind of information are you getting relative? Because anybody can go on the website.
Yep.
I've got it on my phone and I just kind of look at it once a day, and the numbers keep going really high. We're, right, I think, approaching 2,000 active cases in the county. Are you, as the mayor, getting any information about how many of those are in the city limits?
No, I have not. And in fact, I'm getting resistance about getting those numbers, and I'm not happy about that.
Okay.
We've had to glean from information that comes from the state relative to census tracts, census data that are split up throughout the city, and we have to try to kind of piece that together to be able to glean any type of information that is specific to the city. Okay. So it would be very beneficial if we could get this, not just us, but every community in the county, if we could get this information. Us, I think, more specifically, though, because of our position, right at the border, right? Our proximity with Minnesota. And of course, now with further restrictions about to happen in Minnesota, that means, once again, they're going to be coming across the border. And they're looking for the place that has the fewest restrictions. And right now, ours are fewer than theirs. And it's really regional. It's because of our proximity, we're going to get hit with these people coming across the border, just like we did when we opened up our businesses prior to Minnesota doing that back in May.
Right. I think you're referring to Minnesota is going to have a restriction of 10 p.m. The bars have to close. So
last I heard, they're shutting them down, period, for 4 weeks. I heard that's coming tonight. Okay. They're shutting. That's what I understand. I don't want to get people panicked on that, but I read that's earlier today, that's what's on the table, is 4 weeks of shutdown.
And for those of us old enough to remember when the drinking age was different in Minnesota, more restrictive, guess where the Minnesota teenagers came to drink?
That's exactly right.
So, all right, well, let's move on then. Or maybe the transition we'll have is regarding COVID, is the impact on budgeting. We're in November. I assume your budget for 2021 is pretty well set, as well as the levy. So right. What impacts are you seeing, or did you see, with COVID with regard to the city budget?
Well, the first thing that we saw for sure, and this didn't affect the budget that much, all right? This is something that's tied a little bit differently, the way we spend this money. not specifically to the budget and operating expenses as much as trying to help out in different areas. But the most important impact that we've seen is the hotel motel tax. And so obviously throughout the summer, the numbers were down, the people that were coming to our hotels and motels. And in fact, a number of them had actually been shut down for a period of time. And there might still be a couple that are shut down right now. So that's the biggest impact. That money impacts things like the Chamber of Commerce because they operate, they depend greatly on that tax. There are some other organizations we fund through that tax, and that would include Historical Society, Octagon House, and a couple of other things that are out there, the Senior Center over at CCH. Anyway, suffice to say, there are a number of entities that we fund with.
So is there a spillover effect then from that deprivation of those funds in those other areas?
We haven't seen that yet, but there will be. You know, there's no doubt there will be, and we're going to do our best to prioritize that money and put it where it needs to be. Relative to our budget as a whole for our operating expenses, we haven't seen yet a great impact. We are anticipating a great impact. And because of that, we came in with a flat budget. We had a 0% increase in the budget this year. And I think that we'll talk about that probably in a few minutes. But in the meantime, we're expecting that the fallout, the economic fallout from COVID here locally will not manifest itself until next summer probably. And then we're expecting it could get pretty bad. If we can't keep our restaurants and our businesses open and keep cash flow coming into them, they're going to be in a world of hurt, and we could lose a number of our businesses. I think it's likely that we will anyway. But you know, if this continues for any length of time and these vaccines don't work or aren't distributed widely for a period of time, we're going to see a huge economic impact here that might take us a while to recover from. I think once again, prudence dictates that we anticipate that when it comes to our budgeting. And we are taking those things into consideration for next year. We are already thinking about next year's budgeting and potential years after that. So we haven't seen a great fallout yet from this, but we're anticipating that we will.
Yes, it's a similar approach on the from the school board end of things, because you know, obviously we got the legislature works in biennium budgets, and you know, we're anticipating that it may be a couple years before we see the full impact from the state level anyway.
Right.
So with that, you mentioned talking about the impact on the budget and the zero increase of the overall tax dollars levied by the city, but
right.
What was the impact of that 0%? Because I know that there was increase in valuation overall of the fair market value of your properties within the city border. So how did that impact the levy?
Well, that's a great question. And again, something that's very timely. I'm glad we have an opportunity to talk about this right now as those revaluations went out to people. And when they see, a lot of people, when they see the increase in their property values right away, that connotes to them that they had a commensurate increase in their taxes. And it's not working that way. It doesn't work that way. And in the fine print on the letters that went out from Beaumar that everybody got, they might see that, they should see that if they read it. But what has happened is we're seeing about a 25% across the board, average across the board increase in home valuations. It's not going to be consistently 25%. Some people may have experienced some modifications, upgrades to their homes that they're going to see a larger valuation increase. But what they're also going to see is a commensurate 24.5% decrease in the mill rate, meaning that their taxes, for the most part, are going to stay the same. Now, because of some of the valuation increases here, because especially with businesses and things like that, a number of people in our city are going to experience a decrease in the city side of their tax bill. Keep in mind, we're one of 4 taxing districts. And so on the city side, many, I'd like to say most, it might be, but I'd say close to 50%, either one, a little bit either way, are going to see a decrease, somewhat of a decrease in their taxes. Now, that means
portion.
in the city portion. Some people are going to see an increase, but that's generally on the higher end of the tax scale. But if they do see an increase, it's going to be a modest increase. So again, overall, our budget's flat, and that also includes, accommodations for some increases in like our share of the funding for the library and some of those things like that.
As far as the investments that the city makes, then if there is a 0 increase, was there anything in your 5-year plan? I know that the city does a comprehensive plan and that is in the works. And if you want to talk about that, you can. But I use that terms of, you do your public works project more than just a 1-year basis. So did anything have to get cut in order to maintain that 0% increase?
No, and that kind of leads into a couple other issues that I hope we're going to have a chance to talk about. No, it has not impacted anything that we've seen, that we've had on the horizon with respect to any of the projects that we have planned for public works or streets or anything like that so far.
Okay. Let's talk about some of those projects because, I've had you on, try to get you on at least on an annual basis, and you've been talking about the revitalization of the downtown. There was the passage of the TIF, and then we've got things like the boat launch and the boardwalk and Highway 35. So, we are limited on time, but which one do you want to tackle first? What's the impact with the TIF, and where are we at with that?
All right, so TIF, we've got 2 TIF districts that are currently operating right now. The first one is over at St. Croix Meadows, the old dog track. And when we first started that project, the valuation on that property was right at about $5 million, I believe, with a tax impact of $200,000 to that property. No, $100,000 on that property. $100,000 tax impact, $25,000 to the city on that. Our valuation on that right now is at about $35 million. The valuation of that property has increased multiple times. The tax revenue that is attributed to that property has increased at least tenfold. And when I say attributed to, you're not going to see that on the tax rolls yet because that money rolls back into the investment in that property until that TIF district is paid off.
Will it be paid off early?
We're hoping, we have had a history of paying our TIF districts off in 10 to 12 years. We're expecting that to be the same depending upon any type of economic fallout that might come our way from COVID. But we're hoping to be on schedule for an early retirement of that TIF district, which means then all of that revenue shifts into the coffers for all 4 taxing authorities. And that means a big increase to the school district, which is 50% of the share of the tax bill, and 25% to the city, 25% to the county, a little chunk over to WITC. So, yeah, well, I mean, nothing but good news coming out of that. Same thing with the TIF district downtown. Our valuation has gone up significantly over there, and we are seeing good tax revenue attributed to that as well. And we're very happy with the overall increased valuation in our downtown TIF district. And there's more to come on that, as well as out at St. Croix Meadows. So how does that affect everything? The good news is our share of the revenue that comes off that TIF district must be pumped back into that TIF district. And that's going to help pay for projects. Again, it kind of dovetails into the questions that you were having about how is it going to impact our projects. Well, downtown, that money that is our share of the TIF increment will be funneled back into those public works projects that we have scheduled for down along the riverfront and in that TIF district.
What's going to happen this year? Let's not look at beyond 2021, but what do we see that's going to affect people if they're driving on our roads in the city of Hudson? What are they going to see physically happening in public works projects?
Well, first of all, we're going to see downtown, the 2nd Street is part of the state highway system, and that is going to, the state is coming in and they're redoing that next summer, probably late spring. And then, you know, our street's going to be torn up for a couple months next summer.
Is that going to be routed on First Street then?
Yes, it would be routed mostly down to First Street, and where we can, probably back up to 3rd Street a little bit. And as we move our way forward, and that project is going up through North Hudson, or at least into North Hudson, beyond the Malibu Bridge for sure. As that project progresses, we'll be able to start easing traffic back in downtown.
That Highway 35 project is going to make Vine Street look like it was a driveway project, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's at a tough time for businesses. You know, they're going to be trying to make a comeback from what happened with COVID. But interestingly, you know, we listened to the chamber, and the chamber said the businesses do not want to wait on that project. They think it's important that that project get done. So we sat with the Department of Transportation and said, good, let's do it. They asked if we wanted it pulled. Of course, if we pull it, it's tough getting back on their schedule. You're waiting 5-6 years. So the local businesses said no, they want to make sure we move forward with that.
So maybe advice to our viewers could be to make sure that they frequent the downtown businesses as much as they can through April, and do it safely, I guess. Well, with all that, what would you like to end on? Because we're kind of out of time. So
what have we missed? I would like to talk a little bit about Lakefront Park. We're going to next summer. Also, something that's going to be happening on First Street is that we're going to be elevating the boat launch. Anybody that pays attention to what happens with that boat launch in the summertime knows that, with the exception of last summer, we literally had our boat launch closed for half the season. And that meant our people couldn't access the river with their boats. It also meant a revenue loss to the city. We're going to raise that boat launch and expand it. We're going to raise it about 2.5 feet. Currently, we close that boat launch at about 81 feet, and no wake is at 83. We're going to take it up to about 83.5, somewhere in there, so that you will still be able to launch your boat even during a no wake period. We're going to extend the parking lot a little bit north to accommodate more boats and trailers, cars and trailers in the parking lot. And we're going to add 1 or 2 ramp stations for loading and unloading. That's important. Going beyond that, we've gotten preliminary approval for what I like to call our boardwalk that will run along the wall down there on the water that will actually be floating. It's going to be 600 and some feet and provide for tie-along to bring boaters in from the river into our businesses, into our downtown, to have that full river city experience that I think is so important for being a river city. And DNR has given us preliminary approval, so we're still working on the diagrams for that and some of the testing that needs to be done in the water and things like that. What have we missed, Jamie?
I think you covered it all. I think we got a lot of good things to come in years beyond that, but just giving the folks a glimpse of what they might see on their tax bills and what they'll see on their streets, I think is important to folks. And I'll end with, I still got to give you a call so you can give me the tutorial on how to get that parking app on my cell phone. Right?
Anytime. Let me also say this. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I know this is difficult. You're there, I'm here, we're usually together. And I really want to thank the folks in Hudson and our surrounding communities for the support that they're showing our businesses. This is a tough time for everybody. And I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone stays well. Please feel free to reach out to me, to the city council, to our city administrator, our administration here at the city if you need help. We're here to help out. And we're going to try to guide everybody through this as best we can. So once again, thank you for the opportunity, Jamie.
Thank you, Rich, for coming on the show again. And I want to thank our viewers for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I hope you've learned something, and be safe out there, and happy holidays.